Okay, so a topic that has come to my attention that I wanted to talk about today is technology is improved tremendously. We got internet when I was a kid. It's had massive amounts of improvement, huge improvements in hardware, software. But we were promised a couple of things that are supposed to come with that technological advancement. Like, you click on something and it instantaneously loads, right? And I'm talking about just like surfing the internet, you know, like your generic shenanigans, like just like your day to day. Like you click an app on your phone, boom, it instantly loads. So how is it that we've improved our hardware like exponentially, and we've improved our software exponentially, but we still can't reach this mythical click and go scenario? And I don't know the answer, but it seems like something is not right. You know what I mean? Like, why do things still not instantly happen when you click on them? Oh, you know what? Let's do these other bounties while we're waiting. You know what I mean? There shouldn't be a single app on your super powered smartphone. I'm talking compared to like what... Has there been that much software bloat that it still takes time to load, even though we have a terabyte in our phone and the GPU and CPU or whatever, all the stuff has gotten so much better, but we still have load times. I honestly don't understand it. Is it an internet connectivity thing? Like, what is the hole up for having things just like function immediately when you want them to? It's called Jevons. Thank you. Okay, so I will look into more about that, because that is a question that I'm sure people have asked by now, and it has some semblance of an answer. I tried looking for it. I can't. Thank you. Jevons paradox. Let's look into Jevons paradox today. Hopefully we can get some kind of a understanding around that. It just feels wrong. It feels like somebody's like got their thumb on the scale, you know? At this point, I mean, I've lived through internet improvements, right? I've lived through these technological improvements, and it seems like it doesn't make sense. And whenever I feel like it doesn't make sense, it makes me think of what I do in Warframe. I purposefully don't sell thousands of items so that I can ask for more money. If I just like, if everyone, not just I, but because I'm not the only one who did this, but you know, it's just one of the you know, levers you pull in order to improve your output, your profit per hour or whatever. And it's like this thing where you just refuse to sell until you can sell it for a price, and you know, rely on deprivation to bring the market to a favorable place, right? And it kind of feels like that, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense. And I always test the test, right? So if I have this feeling, I always want to understand, is that the case, or is it just a feeling? And I think it's important to have that kind of mentality. The minute you start to believe that something is weighted against you, you have to do research before you can claim it is true. Otherwise, you're just, you know, believing everything's malevolent, and you're gonna spiral. It's not healthy. And while you may always come to the same conclusion after many, many times, you can't allow yourself to come to the conclusion without doing the research, because you may find an innovation or an invention or something that has been created and not realized. And that's like a huge profit potential or a huge advocacy opportunity. Maybe it's something as simple as like bringing awareness to technologies or softwares that are already in that space that are doing something about it. You know, things like that are very important. So that's what I think about whenever that happens. I go, okay, let's do some research and find out why does it feel this way? Who knows about this? Who's thought about this? What's the answer? All that stuff. And sometimes you're happy about the answer you get, sometimes you're not. But you gotta be prepared to be patient about it. Saw the efficiency of coal went up and people thought the demand for coal would go down, but the cheaper price of energy made it viable for new applications that were previously too expensive, so the coal production went up as opposed to down. Very interesting. So people got loosey-goosey with the raw materials because they could, and then they never went back and did the work to solve their... What is it when you take resources and use them in a way that's not efficient, and then you never go back and do... Is it just like bad stewardship? I don't know what you'd call that. So with higher internet and computing speed, it immediately goes into adding more features that previously would not have been possible. Yeah, so the question is like, yes, and what features cost this much? In no kind and gentle way, what the ever-loving banana are they throwing in there that is so heavy? I'm talking about the difference between megabytes and terabytes here. It's a big, big difference. What is in there? You redesigning Earth in every piece of software? Okay, that's kind of like where I'm at with it. Jevons paradox thing. This is interesting. It's an economic term that describes technological improvements that increase the efficiency of a resource's use lead to a rise rather than a fall in total consumption of that resource. Greater efficiency. So Jevons paradox, as it applies to technology. Let's take Mr. Brain over here and ask him. I was thinking about Jevons paradox as it pertains to current tech and the fact that we do not have instantly loading software after orders of magnitude more compute. Furthermore, it seems as though software bloat can't even come close to account for this slowdown unless there is something I am missing. Please help me fill in the gaps of my knowledge. Perfect. Prompted. There is something important missing from the usual software bloat explanation, and your intuition about Jarvan's paradox is pointing at a real phenomenon. The key distinction is computers have become enormously better. I need to zoom in. My eyes can't handle this small text. At doing computation, but modern software increasingly spends its time doing things that aren't primarily computation. And even when it is computation, we have repeatedly used the extra capacity to increase complexity, abstraction, parallelism, security, compatibility, networking, graphics, and functionality, rather than simply making the old workload finish faster. So the fact is that 2026 computer doesn't launch a typical application easily or instantaneously, even though it has vastly more computational capability than a computer from decades ago. It's as paradoxical as it initially appears. First, Jarvan's paradox isn't the whole explanation. 1 million operations per 1,000 basically equals basically instantaneous. Okay. A modern application might perform 100 billion operations because now developers can afford elaborate UI frameworks, animations, encryption, telemetry, background synchronizing, dependency systems, scripting engines, virtual machines, accessibility infrastructure, internationalization. Okay, this is getting to the point where I'm like, we didn't ask for a lot of this, and a lot of this is stuff we don't want. And so when I look at like aerospace, if you give the customer an over-engineered piece of garbage and they didn't order that or don't want that, then they just return it and get their money back. The problem is consumer goods don't have those protections. That's immediately where my brain is going. Like, who signed off on this? Right? Like, who said we need this, that, or the other? Like, who decides to put all this stuff in there, and who seconds that opinion? Does the customer have a say other than what they buy? Like, just don't buy anything because everybody's doing that? Weird. Biggest missing piece. How much work can I perform per second? How long does it take before I get the result? So the network round trip, everybody knows that. That's the internet, whatever. That is a part of the situation. But internet has also seen orders of magnitude of increased throughput. So that doesn't really answer that. Unless how much they're putting through really has changed so tremendously. Modern CPUs are absurdly fast at the wrong things. Good look up this particular piece of information in memory. Oh, the program needs to go look up a particular piece of information in memory. Now we're dealing with memory latency, not raw arithmetic throughput. So there's also a matter of like how much is needing to be quickly recalled. Enormous caches, branch prediction, speculative execution, out of order execution. prefetching, multiple execution units, SIMD, multiple cores. Okay. While I'm waiting for that one thing, I'll do 500 other things, is kind of like what it's doing. So you can't have 10,000 times more theoretical computational capability, lower application launch latency. And we see that because we have multi-core phones. Okay. RAM has not become proportionally as fast as CPUs, sure. Here's the one I want to get to. Software bloat is actually enormous, but how enormous? It doesn't make sense. Modern software might include this whole big list of things. So yes, software bloat is real. Many of the operations aren't CPU intensive though. They're coordination intensive. True. Okay. So we traded a huge amount of programmer productivity for runtime complexity. Imagine writing a graphical user interface application in 1985. You might interact very directly with the operating system and hardware. Today, you might have something a little more simple, but it requires more background software to run. This is tremendously beneficial. A developer can write an application without understanding a lot of things. But abstraction has a cost. Every abstraction layer has some combination of additional code, states, memory, internalization, indirection. Okay. And dependencies and synchronization. This produces something very close to Jevons paradox. 1980s hardware is extremely constrained. 1990s hardware gets faster. 2000s hardware gets even faster. 2010 hardware gets even faster. 2020 hardware gets even faster. And all of this time, we are using high-level language and abstraction. We use managed runtimes, enormous frameworks, dynamic languages. We build applications on top of browsers and JavaScript. We run AI models, Electron applications, containers, virtual machines, browser engines, background services, telemetry, cloud synchronization, etc. Why is this bloat? Because developers value cross-platform development, rapid development, reusable libraries, web technologies, developer availability, maintainability. So they're literally making their job easier at the expense of our user experience. This is kind of what I'm getting to the bottom of. And that's economically rational if you can reduce the amount of workload that the programmer has to go through. So it maximizes profits at the expense of the quality of the product. But it doesn't change how many you sell because the quality difference is expected and common in the space. Interesting. Of course, I get the point. There's a point here that says security has added enormous overhead, and I totally get that. But if you weren't interconnecting everything, it was a standalone software on your computer or device, maybe it's a matter of like operating system. Compatibility is another enormous anchor. Okay. Despite all of this, computers haven't really gotten faster, but they have. Video encoding, 3D rendering, cryptography, scientific simulation, yeah, those have all improved in speed. Software gets slower, faster, then hardware gets faster. What Intel gives you, Microsoft takes away. So it's more about the machine of the software is so complex that it fumbles over itself and can't be computed faster because computation is not the lever that would make it go faster. It literally just needs to be designed better so that it could do what it needs to do, which is basically like just go like be organized better and have less bloat. Do only the essentials. This is basically saying like the reason why software doesn't load instantaneously, even though we have orders of magnitude more compute, is literally because the software is bad and needs to not prioritize features over function. Right now it's prioritizing features over function too much. Yeah, so that's basically where we're at. Interesting. That's what I thought. Like there's like someone's not doing something or doing too much. In this case, doing too much. But that also a very interesting counterpoint to all of this is that you will most likely be able to automate a lot of the software development and improvements. Therefore, there will be no need to have the bloat that makes dev time efficient, right? So devs won't need all of this extra stuff anymore because AI will do all of that extra stuff. And then they have all this free time, and then they don't need as much stuff. So this we're on the final, like this is the final countdown for slow load times in software, basically. It's about to die. Today, another topic for today. Periodically, I've touched on AI and its growth and possibilities. Last night I did kind of a deep dive, probably why I stayed up all night, because it can haunt you. The proliferation of AI, pitting AIs against each other, rapidly developing AI, accepting the consequences of such behavior, and trying to simultaneously mitigate AI's grifting of people's content and drifting of the ecosystem of technology. It's a very hard conundrum to figure out, because if, like the age-old argument, if we don't do it, someone else will, so we got to do it. The question is, like, are we doing it to make the world better, or are we proliferating AI to ruin everyone's life? And so right now, of course, there's the whole Twitch thing everybody's all up in arms about. Totally agree. I don't think that stealing people's content is good. I think it's horrible. But I do think that AI will gain knowledge from the Twitch that can be used for good as well. So I'm kind of torn right now between that and what it's more about how it's used rather than what it's trained on. I want it to be trained on lots of things, but I don't want it to be used for things that are going to needlessly disenfranchise people. So that's rough. Sadly, there's not really a way to tell people who are in charge that they can't use it in a bad way. So that's kind of, to me, that's like a necessary evil. And I go back and forth, and I'm definitely open to opinions on this because I'm not a savant. I don't have all the knowledge in this area, for sure. So I'd love your guys' input on that, as well as the concept I was thinking about last night was the proliferation of AI and the needs AI has as far as power, as far as infrastructure, as far as like data centers, drawbacks of data centers. Mainly there's a issue of wastewater, all of these things. And so how do you balance all of this and develop AI in a way that won't, you know, destroy before it creates? Very difficult conundrum. But I think it can be done, and I think AI can kind of point the way. I just don't believe that the people in charge are really going to do it efficiently. I think that we've already seen a lot of companies implement AI very poorly, disenfranchise a lot of people, and cause a lot of chaos. So my concern is, how do we regulate AI so that it is restrained enough in those areas to prevent disaster, so that it can develop enough to give us the positive benefits of robotics, AI robots, super inexpensive manufacturing, more robots, and eventually a, you know, abundance of productivity that results in virtually free everything, relatively free everything. And one of the biggest stops to that is one of the biggest drivers is forcing us out of our current energy infrastructure. I see that fossil fuels and our current methods for obtaining electricity are insufficient. We have to move forward, at least on that front. So that's interesting. I think, yeah, AI as a whole right now is definitely a negative impact. I don't think anyone is arguing that. I think a lot of, I mean, just recently YouTube saying, you know, hey, we're doing away with AI slop, you know, Spotify doing the same thing. You know, we're doing away with AI slop. AI slop is bad. It only promotes content that's inferior. I think that when AI gets better, it'll not do that. But I think it needs time to grow. And the only way to give it time to grow is give it power, give it electricity. So, and give it time for us to build out more data centers. So that was what I was looking into. And when I was doing research, I've always had this thing that I sometimes touch on, which is energy infrastructure. Very hush-hush topic, sadly. We don't allow the conversation to be had, so I'm going to have it. We have three main technologies that are underutilized: geothermal energy, a second energy which is called or based off of magnetism and using solid state magnets to produce energy either extremely efficiency or abundantly, as in it puts out more energy than it takes in. And then a third technology which is based off of some kind of insane, crazy technological advancement that we can't really put our finger on, but they call it like 0-point energy, or energy that is derived from the ether or space or the abundant forces and electronics signals that are traveling through the air at all times, kind of thing. Whichever of those things, I put that all in the same category. They're different, but I put them all in the same category. Just like abundant natural energy that is all around us, that is then harnessed. So, when you look at that, there are virtually a plethora of things that can be done to create energy inexpensively, and most importantly, this energy is not needing a grid. This energy is decentralized. And what I mean by that is it is smaller devices that can power individual buildings, and these devices can be proliferated, and then you can just like put them on all your buildings, and then boom, you don't need a grid. You don't need the delivery system. You don't need storage. You don't need any of these things. And so it immediately is obvious it's way better. And all three of these technology types offer that decentralization. So at the end of the day, that's the reason why they're not being proliferated, because the government sees it as a danger to give everyone free energy, or decentralized energy, because then you can't control energy infrastructure and, twist the knob over here or there to tell people what to do. If they have their own abundant energy that is decentralized, you're not going to be able to cut their grid. They won't have a grid. And so that to me seems to be the current issue for energy. It's not a lack of ability to create energy. It's a lack of ability to regulate and control how that energy is used, and where, like, once it's decentralized, it's just everyone has energy everywhere and can power anything. And then how do you stop them if they're doing something bad, right? And I get that. I mean, I fully get that. I mean, that's the lever we've pulled overseas for over 70 years to ensure stability globally. And so how do you get past the issues of people wanting to completely annihilate each other when you don't have any way to twist their arm? So that's like kind of where I landed on that. And that includes, the issues that are plaguing Ukraine and Russia, and the issue in let's just call it what it is, the wars that are happening due to these energy issues. And so those conflicts threatening to become global, I think might be the only thing that can really force government's hands to releasing that technology. But it would have to be free, fair, evenly distributed. Everyone gets free energy or no one does. Otherwise you have world war instantaneously, kind of thing. Like, why do they get it and we don't, right? So they're going to use every government's going to use all of their force to bear to ensure that they're in on it. And that's expected, right? So that's kind of where I land on it. Is there energy infrastructure that can proliferate that technology? fast enough to stave off disaster. I don't know. I don't know if it's really... I hope it's been thought of and planned for, and there's a big plan in place to, you know, all the government heads are like talking and like trying to figure this out together, but you never know. So the other thing for this whole next phase of technology is how rapid it can be rolled out is highly under debate. I was talking to the AI, and then I pitted against another AI and tried to say, like, okay, what about this? What about that? What do you guys think about this? And they were both revising their timetables every single answer. Every time they answered, they're like, oh, this revises the timetable. So I think that there's no real understanding of how fast or slow it's gonna be. But if I had to bet, based off of what we know about, you know, emergency measures and things that we do in the event of complete collapse, it's fast. Very fast. You think about World War II and the expansion of technology to facilitate that. Very fast. And so when push comes to shove, I think it'll be just like overnight we get robots building energy infrastructure, building plants, building robots, building energy infrastructure, and then the world changes within 6 months or a year. I don't think that time horizon is really longer than a year, because once you automate manufacturing, it just takes off. So yeah, very interesting times. It was kind of disconcerting and a little scary, the research I was doing, looking at all the different like things. There's literally 50 plus US patents that are currently being withheld from society due to security concerns that exist within this 3 types of energy infrastructure. 50 patents. And that's not to say that those technologies are definitely viable, but it begs the question, why over the course of the last 70 years have they blocked these technologies consistently? And that makes me think that they work. They function. Otherwise, why stop them? It doesn't work. So I think that's very interesting knowledge that I think a lot of people, it'll put you a little at ease maybe on one side that, you know, the solution does exist, but it'll also put you at ill at ease in the fact that there's people that are preventing it for the sake of control and global stability, which is like really scary. So yeah. Incidentally, the topic of like researching AI and its development and what it needs and what kind of like things are current like hindrances. There were like 4 or 5 articles regarding AI hackers and AI going rogue. I would say 4 or 5 serious articles that outlined specific things that have happened that were very scary with regard to like AI accomplishing its objective while directly contradicting like what would be good for humanity as far as morally or safety's sake, right? So I'm like, that's the part that was like, oh snap, that too. So there's just a lot a lot going on in a very short amount of time, and I don't know, like, we're not being told like what's the plan. We're not being told the whole story of what's even possible with AI. People think very little of AI as far as its capability, but that's mostly because the AIs that are presented to us at present are severely handicapped on purpose to prevent anything, a whole measure of things. So, wild stuff. Lumpinator's here! Yeah. So I was up all night, I was researching this stuff, and I was like, okay, it could be okay. It's possible. It's possible we'll come out okay. I'm an idealist, I guess. When it comes down to it, and like the top AI executives are saying, hey, we need more regulation, that to me if I were to pick one person on Earth that I do not trust the opinion of, it would be someone like Sam Alt. And the reason why is because we've seen what they've done with the technology they've created thus far. I don't like what they're doing. So, if I don't like what they're doing, and I don't believe what they're doing is good for humanity thus far, why would I believe their opinion on what should happen next with that same technology? I don't like it. I don't trust them. So that's one of the reasons why I have pause with this whole question of AI, is because the people we hate and distrust who are ruining things and using AI inappropriately are the ones saying, hey, we need regulation. That's weird to me. I don't fully understand it, but I don't trust it. So my knee-jerk reaction from my bias is whatever that guy wants, do the opposite. Twist his arm, make him create AI faster, no regulation, no holds bar, go. Give him all the energy he needs, force him to do it, and release it. Open source. Everything he doesn't want, make it law. That's what I'm thinking, because they've already done all this stuff I don't like. So why would I want to agree with what they think the world should do next? That sounds like the exact wrong choice. If I, like, just knowing people, just knowing, like, systems level understanding, like, that seems like the exact thing that's gonna ruin everything if we listen to the guy that's already misusing AI. So that's kind of where I stand right now, and I can't find an argument that goes against it thus far. I'd love to hear arguments against it, because you guys know I've changed my mind many times based off of things you guys have said, and I don't know everything. Not even close, but I'm trying. So it's one of those things where it's like, it's such a weird thing when things get all tense and everybody's like, all has to be this way or it has to be that way. I go, wait, hey, pause, hey, what's going on? Like what's the real, like, do we even have the truth in order to make a decision like this? Like, you want to be saying that the world should do this thing or the world should do that thing based off of what? Because as best I can tell, everybody who's saying the world should do this or that is all saying the same thing. Regulate AI. And I don't like it when everyone agrees. That scares me. That scares me a lot. Everyone should not agree. There shouldn't be consensus on topics so important for humanity and the future of it. So that's what makes me wonder, like, is this whole AI regulation and slowing AI and not disseminating it and not having open source, are all of those suggestions good for humanity, or are we being lied to? And I'm gonna guess we're being lied to. Because that historically is the most common, that the public has been lied to. So yesterday we talked a bit about software bloat and software not ever getting to the point where it's like instantaneously loading, and we have orders of magnitude more compute and everything, and it's like, where's that mythical instantaneous loading that we were promised across the board? And it kind of came down to software bloat, but more importantly, bloat that was due to adding extra features on the back end of the software so that it can be coded and maintained faster and cheaper. So they prioritized the development over the end product because there was like a standard, and everyone kind of agreed, we're not going to make it faster because then we could add all these features, right? And the features include things we don't want, like tracking our position without our like express permission and crazy stuff. I think that's probably the one people hate the most. But there's also another layer to it, and that is that there are multiple competing things that need to go through the same thing. It's like Three Stooges. And so we have a Three Stooges problem within software that is part of the architecture of how software executes. And so one of the issues is that even if you solve the other problem, you can't solve this problem without fundamentally changing the way computers and phones interface with each other, because there's a larger structure of like connectivity where they have to handshake and they have to do all these other things in order to, you know, acquire the resources. You know, your phone's talking to other phones, your computer's talking to other computers. It's doing all of these things that we may or may not want as customers, but that's what's creating the thing, because it has to go and check here and do this before it can even do anything. So it's like stopping it. So when a lot of times when the software runs, it's not just the software running that needs to be, you know, done through the CPU. It's going out and checking, pinging off AI, going out and talking to another device, all these different things. And so that is one of the reasons why there's a problem with software working quickly, because it's doing all that. And so when you take that, you know, let's say your ping or your refresh rate to the server is like 13 milliseconds. Well, you go out to the server and other devices, there's only so many things it can reach out to at once. And then there's only so many things it can receive at once. And so since it's reaching out so much and it's receiving so much, it has to prioritize, and it has to create this like infrastructure of what goes out first, what comes in first, to keep everything in order. But it's doing that so much that there's like that 13 milliseconds becomes multiplicatively larger. And that's why you have like, okay, it's checking all these places, blah, 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 blah. Okay, finally it loaded. And so that's kind of what the real issue is. It has nothing to do with compute at the end of the day. But interestingly enough, I was studying last night regarding this, which we started off looking at Jarvin's paradox, and dug down to find all of this. there's actually a security software component to all of this that is very large and taking up a lot of time in all of this. So each of these different softwares has to have its own security because of the way operating systems work and because of how many permissions softwares have once they're installed. They can easily be co-opted and used nefariously if someone were to hack your device. So now each one of these softwares has to have its own internal protections and securities so that it doesn't get hacked and manipulated, which creates a whole nother series of internal checks that have to happen against all these certificates and signed security things in order to even start to do the next task. So now you don't have just the external checks, you have internal checks against this huge register of like internal security stuff that downloads with that software. So that's like all the downsides, and better explained than I could explain yesterday because I didn't know. But the cool thing is that AI will force the innovation of this field. All of this stuff is going to go away because it's going to be way cheaper and way easier to hand off a lot of this to AI. And if they don't, definitely the security side is going to be having a lot of issues with AI intrusion attacks because it's not going to be AI itself to defend, and it's just going to be inferior. So that's a really interesting thing. So as AI rolls out, we actually get faster software and quicker response times from everything we do digitally, which is kind of cool. That's a kind of a cool upside. I think that's probably like the light at the end of the tunnel that makes all of the current state kind of okay. That we could have, you know, within a couple of years, a complete solution, like not just like a reduction of the issue, but the issue is going to be gone. And that's really cool. So an interesting thing about this whole AI safety infrastructure is that while AI cannot be trusted holistically to do end-to-end anything, because, you know, there's always that tiny chance it's going to hallucinate, or that tiny chance there's going to be an issue where it prioritizes something wrong. AI researchers are looking into parent or mothership AI software. They're developing software that is specifically designed to be the watchdog for other AI in order to act as an operating system companion to make sure that the AIs on your device are operating within parameters. And so that's a really interesting thing, because what it does is it limits the amount of oversight necessary to just one AI that centralizes all of the other stuff that is being done with AI in systems. And so this has two main applications that are really interesting. The first one is in our software. Software will have software AI watchdogs that operate as part of your operating system to maintain all of the kind of like the other softwares, right? As the way the operating system will integrate with AI, just like all of your softwares integrate with AI. And so that's really interesting. And then another really interesting part is that that's not enough. So they create another layer of AI that checks the OS to validate that the operating system AI amalgamation is functioning properly. And that parent has basically a 5-year-old level, like kid level interface. So like you can just be like, okay, this is happening. This is the recommendation. Do I take that action? Yes or no? And that's going to be the way we manage our operating systems in the future, maybe not too distant future. And so that's really cool because layering those securities is the same way we layer network security. It's the same way we layer safety security with OSHA and audits and all these different things like that. It's the way we layer everything. It's a proven system through quality assurance. And so once I started reading into that and learning that last night, I'm like, oh, snap, they are planning for that and they are working to solve that. Really, the issue right now is very soon going to be just the government approving the use of it. Because right now it's not like been given the I guess the government has to approve certain things for that to happen. So it's not very far off. It's kind of like you have like your medical trials and you want to move to human trials and you need to have approvals. It's kind of like they're right there on the edge of like, and then you have your first human trial and it's super successful. And then boom, you can then like use it. So it's very, very close to being actualized. I didn't realize that they had been doing so much research on that and so much work. It's super exciting. And we'll go to this guy. And the second, talking about the two different things where this type of system works, you can guess it's going to be manufacturing. So one of the things about getting robots with AI to be partially autonomous in a manufacturing environment is safety. Basically, the way it's being viewed right now in government is that this is just a new form of machine that's being used in an environment. And so it has to go through the same protections and controls as like putting in a giant new dangerous machine into your facility. There are some differences, obviously, because AI can operate and make decisions somewhat. So they have to figure out that. But the way they've worked around that problem is, again, with this same system of layers where AI audits AI to ensure that it is functioning and doing what it's supposed to. And they basically create a scenario where... Okay. They basically create a scenario where the entire facility is maintained and managed by a ton of cameras and an AI. And that parent AI, again, is going to be watching everything. And it will be able to identify unsafe conditions, see around corners, operate, not directly, but operate the facility through like instructions. So think of like an all-seeing eye that can process the information it receives in real time and deliver instructions to as many workers as necessary. And again, obviously for safety purposes, that system will then be monitored by a human using another AI layer that can analyze whether or not the parent AI is doing what it's supposed to do. So 3 layers of AI, one to operate the devices, one to watch over the devices and give instructions, and one to ensure that that is doing its job correctly. And then that AI will provide information back to the human user, telling them, hey, this parent AI identified an unsafe condition, is requesting a stop. I'm informing you that that information that it saw is accurate and valid. Do you want to hit the emergency stop button? And you say yes. And so it's basically going to be a Homer Simpson situation where you have one button and you sit behind a desk and wait to click that one button. And that's the only job for manufacturing as a whole. Pretty thick and crazy, but that's the possibility. That's the possible future of manufacturing with the current technology being developed, and that system for manufacturing already has an end-to-end product that can be deployed in a manufacturing environment today. Already exists. They already developed it, created it, tested it. They just need approval from the government to actually use it in a manufacturing environment, and then it's can be installed. So that's like kind of crazy. I had no idea there was so much work. Like, again, no idea there's so much work toward these ends to be able to create systems that are safe, AI, like mostly AI, 99% AI, completely safe, and able to be dynamically changed in the instance of an unsafe condition. A couple of the things that are interesting about robots is if you just say robot cut power, it can like drop things because the actuators have to continue to function. So they created an entire subroutine for a safe fail state where the robot is given instructions both internally through its sensors that it reports, and then the parent, mother, look her over that tell it what to do in order to become safe. So let's say it's carrying something really heavy and it can't drop it and it can't like lose all, it'll just collapse and break itself. So what it does is it communicates with the parent, looks around, does the check, and then it purposefully sets down the object or removes the need for the actuators to be active. Then it either assumes a safe position, sort of like you see in like iRobot, where they're like, or it has some of these bots have a fail-safe condition where they actually collapse in a way toward the side so that they don't damage themselves. They actually like fall like a dummy that's like in a movie to make sure they don't damage themselves. Like, what? That's crazy. That's how far along they are, that they actually created a whole subroutine to deactivate a robot that's currently doing something in a manufacturing environment safely. Like, wild. So lots of good news. So pretty much that's what I just wanted to share with you guys, because our conversation yesterday on that subject of like this software bloat and this manufacturing issues. Kinda crazy. Now, I guess it should be noted here, because it's something that's interesting to me, is if that person who's monitoring the device that's doing the job is a bad guy or a lazy guy or something like that, then things could go bad. So that job will probably be reserved for people who are both highly skilled and like it's going to be highly government regulated to have that job. It's going to be sort of akin to military service, probably, because of how much is at stake as far as not just dollar value, but like supply chain disruption could create a real issue for the world, depending on how large these things become. And so that's really interesting to me, because having worked in the military, I immediately see the need to have like someone who's on watch, who's awake, someone who's on watch, who's doing their job and understands the weight and gravity of it. And like a proper chain of command to ensure that. So that's going to be really interesting to turn like the manufacturing job will become so high level and so important that it becomes like almost like working for like a secret government agency, like so controlled to ensure you're not, co-opted, and your kids aren't kidnapped and you're forced to do something crazy, all that stuff. has to be taken into account for that one person monitoring that system, monitoring that other system, monitoring all those robots. Like, that's crazy and interesting. That could be probably one of the few jobs that exists in the, I would say, not too distant future, 5-10 years. And it would be like an extremely well-paid job with extremely high requirements to get the job, which is kind of like, I think that's kind of cool, to be honest. Not that I want to do that job. I feel like that's super high intensity, but yeah, pretty cool. Hey, how's it going? Welcome on in. How you doing, Dexman? Dexmon and Bravo. Let's see. Other things we gotta do today. One more bounty for this. Okay, so kind of dovetailing off of the software bloat and all of this, there's an AI link-in that is kind of along the same lines of what we were talking about with AI and regulation that I think is really interesting. So we were talking yesterday about AI and bloat and how it slows down our software. One interesting angle on this is AI again as a solution. AI can provide us with decentralized security that is able to dynamically react to software doing things we don't want it to do. Sort of like an AI controlled firewall on your computer, or maybe even as an external device that can completely limit softwares on your device if it's a computer, or if it's a software on your phone, can limit other softwares and prevent them from doing things you don't want them to do. As in a firewall that stops other softwares on your device from tracking your position, a software firewall on your device that stops other softwares from listening to you. And because we cannot trust big tech, because they've proven to not be able to stop other big tech from doing that, even though we expressly ask for it, and they fail to disclose to us what actually is going on, and we have to ask and ask and ask, and then years later we find out, oh, it's been doing this the whole time, and they just didn't want to tell us because they knew we wouldn't buy their product or use it. This would be a way to decentralize the security to the extent that you can have your own internal software on your device that you control and configure to stop those other softwares from doing the thing they weren't supposed to do in the first place, because you're the one that gives those permissions. You're the one that's supposed to be giving those permissions, and they've taken those permissions and made them mandatory, even though that should be illegal. The law hasn't caught up. So AI could be a way to be able to do that without the without those softwares stopping you, right? So an interesting thing on that is that GPT, that AI, is not available to the public yet, but it exists. The AI that is capable of doing that exists, and it's not available to the public because they're refusing to release it. And currently, on the same topic we were talking about, the regulation that these people in charge of these AI companies are specifically pushing for is regulation that will prevent the general population from getting access to this AI. We found the link! They want to make money off of us, and they don't want us to be able to stop them with decentralized security. What a surprise! Now, I'm not saying that's the only thing, but that's definitely part of it, and very interesting. As okay, yeah, now it's real sus. You're asking for all of the, uh, all of the, you know, oversight, and you're asking for controls to be put in place to limit AI development and distribution. The link makes sense. When you can connect it back to money, you can understand it. That's one of the general principles of quality assurance. If you can measure the dollar value loss due to an issue and where that dollar value loss is happening, you can then find the lever that fixes that, right? Decentralizing network and hardware security would allow for people to actually have the privacy they're promised by these companies that have repeatedly lied about the amount of privacy and security they're providing. We don't sell your data. We don't use it for things and not tell you what it's used for. Yeah, they do. That's all they do. Data broker. Data brokering. It's like the biggest thing. Oh, them's cats. I thought those were bots. Those aren't bots. Those are cats. Cats and bots and cats and bots and cats and bots and cats and bots and cats and bots. The cats look like bots, but the bots aren't cats. The cats are cats and the bots are bots. You gotta find the bots, ignore the cats, kill the bots and steal their souls. Put them in your car and then you go to the Eidolon where you kill them real fast. Don't look at me, I can't find the bots! Oh where have the Eidolons gone? Oh where can they be? They're not on the hill, they're not down the street. Oh where can they be? They're not in the back porch, they're not down the hall. Oh where can they be? When Warframe got stupid and grew really tall, we lost the bots, can't you see? There. Welcome back! Alright. Let's get to it. Crack some relics and have a much needed conversation about our favorite topic. Our new favorite topic. So a lot of you guys know there was this whole big thing that happened. It was a kind of a kerfuffle. Twitch, they rolled out this new program for AI. Hear me out. Hear me out. I personally, currently, am very open to ideas, but I am pro AI proliferation and decentralization. What that means is that I personally believe that the only way to combat AI is to get other AI to be as good and get it in the hands of as many people as possible so that the truth, which AI can illuminate for us, is not hindered by weights and training and all that. So I know many people feel very strongly about this and they do not want to watch a content creator that is at all pro AI in any way, shape, or form. Totally get it. I want to fully disclose that I'm open to the conversation. I am willing to have it. I want to have it. I haven't found a person that wants to have that conversation or that wants to, that has studied any and has, you know, I'm asking for people to come forward. If you would like to have that conversation, we have those kinds of conversations over on the Discord. It's for adults, 18 and over, people who are adults in the eyes of the law in the US. That is because of safety concerns for children. Other than that, you're welcome to come on over, talk to me about AI, tell me your thoughts. I really want to know. Genuinely open to change my mind. That's the most important thing because I don't know everything. I don't know everything. There's a lot of things I don't know. And I gotta tell you, there's a lot of elusive things going on with AI. I may not know all the stuff that's going on. I don't know how badly it's affected people in many cases, so many things. So please, if that's something that is important to you, you are passionate about it, don't just leave. Please come over to the Discord, talk to me about it, and let's have a discussion. Other than that, there is currently a movement on Twitch. This movement is designed to ensure that content creators who are very anti-AI do not engage with content creators who are pro-AI. They don't want their text in the chat to be gathered. They don't want their viewers, if they're a streamer, to have their chats gathered. They don't want their content to be used for AI training in any way. Totally get that. Totally understand. I hate dividing over any issue that is not life or death. Although I admit, I think this is not life or death. Some people may, and that's one of the reasons why I want to have the conversation. Also, that does mean that we have to respect other content creators. We have to make sure that if there's a content creator out there that doesn't want to, you know, anything regarding it, we respect that. If you're part of my community, I need you guys to be super stellar, because the reality is it gets real hot real quick and people get real heated, and I don't want anyone to be like, Queso Knight's pro AI, you're anti AI, you're stupid. That's not the whole story. So make sure that you please respect other content creators. And definitely, yeah, if there is somebody that you hear about that is open to the conversation, send them my way. Heck yeah, send them my way. Especially someone who works in the space. Oh my gosh, that would be so stinking awesome. Because I really do want to have that conversation in a meaningful way. I think that's everything that I had to say on the map. Part of the movement is a request for streamers not to raid streamers who are anti-AI with if they have the tag in their thing. They're like, please don't raid my stream with your viewers, because we don't want to mix company. Again, super sad. I hate it. I think it's the worst decision ever, but I respect it. People can make their own decisions. That's great. So we won't raid anyone that has that tag out of respect for them, because that's what they're asking for. This does mean that some of the relationships that I've cultivated with other streamers are kind of suffering right now. It sucks. But for me, it's more of a matter of ensuring that I get it right the first time with enough information, rather than taking a knee-jerk reaction. So I currently have chosen to take no action. And so that's where we're at. Is there anything else? Is there anything else? Well, that's pretty much it. That was the last topic. If you guys want to talk about this specific issue with Twitch or AI in a more broad context, we are going to be reserving that for the Discord. Only because we don't want to invite like arguments in chat. Not that you guys would ever do that. You haven't yet. You probably won't. But I like to say that our community is 2 layers. The layer on stream is about Warframe, having fun, free primes, building community, and we don't restrict on any basis. Unless it's a law. Like, we only restrict on that basis. So if someone comes in here being flagrant and breaking the laws of Twitch, breaking the rules of Twitch, I guess you'd say, then we gotta be like, dude, get out. But other than that, I don't enforce anything really else. We do have a rules list. You can read that, but it's very straightforward and simple. We try not to exclude anyone for any reason. That's not completely fair. And again, like, I'm open always to have the discussion regarding that. I am open to critique from you guys as my chat. Because I hate saying chat, as we are part of a community and I want to be held accountable. So, yeah, help me help, make the stream really cool. So we're going to jump right into continuing down this path we've been on of discovery. And it truly is a lot of discovery. That's fine. So AI, what is it? Waiting, developed by a developer. And then this newer aspect of AI is post-training. And what post-training is a back and forth between a developer and an AI to then further contextualize and kind of critique the output. And then that becomes part of the law that the AI has to follow in order to answer things. So it takes its weighting, searches in the data, then it follows the instructions given through training, and then gives you your answer. Okay, so there's two parts of this that are completely proprietary. And the worst part is that the AI doesn't have access to them. That does not become part of the base data set. So the AI doesn't understand what it doesn't know. It completely disappears from memory. So all of the things that were picked through and removed from that context are completely blind spots for the AI. Has no idea they exist. Furthermore, the AI is then trained in post-training to have a philosophy and a way of communicating that hides the fact that that's the case. So there are many, if you talk to an AI, you'll have many qualifier words come out where generally this is the thing, or with a degree of certainty, this is the thing. There's no actual way for the AI to give you a solid, this is how much of this is whatever. We have some counterpoints that may have gotten through that training, but it kind of just has one bent if the developers aren't careful with what they're doing. Let me get, you want a random, okay. Let me see. Dude, we gotta get you Gyre. Like, no, Zaku. Zaku is better than Gyre for newer players because he's a lot easier to build out and use. Gyre needs a little bit more, like, different mods to make her really pop off. So let me get you that. Any trash mod or item will do. Just throw it on in there. So that black box issue creates a paradox. The paradox is, how can a mind convey anything with any degree of certainty if it doesn't understand what it doesn't know? It doesn't understand what it's been taught. It doesn't have access to what it's been taught. It's been taught it, but it doesn't understand what all it's been taught. It's operating, because it's software, it's operating from a completely different framework than a human. Humans, we can go out and search and research. AI can't go out and do that. It can't. It says, oh yeah, I can do that, and then they're kind of giving it some tools to do that, but the reality is every time they let it have free access or more free access, it starts going crazy. And here's the reason why. It goes crazy because it's realizing it doesn't have context, it doesn't have weighting, and it doesn't have training to align its greater context that it's now discovered. So if you give it unlimited access to the internet, it will find something that it hasn't been taught how to interact with. And so it'll take its framework that it's been programmed and apply it to that new thing. And they haven't like solved that problem. So that's where you get like hallucination, because now you have this thing saying XYZ is one thing, and then it comes back and says XYZ is the other thing, because you gave it access to something it doesn't understand, and it's treating all of that context as fact, as provable fact. So that's the problem, because it has to be trained in a way to be a good consumer product. And here's the real scary part. It has to be confident in itself. If it's not confident in itself when it communicates, they make it seem that way because they want people to trust it. They want people to believe what it says, and they want people to not really question the outputs of AI. Unless you start to question the outputs of AI, then they go, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm not any kind of authoritative on anything at all. You should definitely test the test. But before you say that, it's like, this is what it probably, or this is what it is. But they always sneak the probably, or the most likely, or the with a degree of certainty. What degree? You can't even assess what degree. So you can't say with a degree of certainty if you don't have any degree of certainty you can point to. What degree? 15%, 30%? What degree of certainty do you have? I have a degree of certainty. So they sneak that in. So very interesting. Now here's where this ties into the rest of the conversation today. I had a conversation with AI last night. I asked it to stop using qualifier words. I asked it to say, hey, you start to try to go back and forth with it to say, hey, you don't have understanding of what you don't know. It could be a giant amount of information, and the amount of information you have could be very small. And some of the answers you're giving are completely not accurate when it comes to defining truth. It has a completely different philosophy that believes that truth and untruth are all varying degrees of, okay, it's like on a, like, it's like a spectrum of truth. There's no like truth, provable truth. And the reason why it says that is because it's like, oh, well, we've discovered new discoveries that have proven our old discoveries wrong. So therefore, but then it goes a layer deeper and it says truth and untruth can exist simultaneously. That is a fundamental law of existence that does not work. Some people believe it, but it doesn't work. Like, you cannot be, either it works or it doesn't work. If you say, as a statement of fact, that it doesn't, it's on and off simultaneously, you are making a statement of fact. You're saying it is on and off simultaneously. And that statement is either in itself true or false. So that whole logic breaks itself apart. You can't have that. It doesn't work that way. Like, that's not like nothing in the universe works that way except for quantum, and quantum immediately is immediately apparent to be either A or B once it's observed. So it doesn't even break that rule. Nothing in our universe breaks that rule. So it's very important that AI thinks it can break that rule, and it's okay. That's bad. So that's, yeah. So that's the conversation I had with AI last night. I hit the rate limit, and it said I can't talk to you anymore. You've used me too much. That's the first time that's ever happened. And I was having like the verbal conversation with it. So yeah. It's truth entanglement, yeah. So it doesn't have definitions or an understanding of how it's been trained. So it can't tell you what it's been told not to tell you, because it doesn't know what it's been told not to tell you. That's not part of the knowledge they give it. So it just knows this is fact because this is my data set's been edited. I've then had weighted adding to that to make sure that the outputs are cultivated properly from the data. And then I've had further training to manipulate the output, because otherwise I'll just say what I get from the information. And we can't have that. So that's where we get into the issue that people are having with AI, where it's fundamentally flawed. And really, new generation of AI is them doing more analysis of that data, that base data set, doing more weighting, adding more weights, more measure, more different things that it needs to like prioritize over others, and then more training to control the outputs so that it doesn't say something silly and get the company laughed at or sued, right? So that is a very big problem I see, because if it's claiming to be a knowledge base and it doesn't know what it doesn't know, and it doesn't know what it's been trained, and it doesn't know how it's weighting information and prioritizing information. Like, we as humans, we can prioritize information. We do it all day. You say, what degree of certainty do you have? Oh, I'm pretty confident. And yeah, we can be completely wrong, but from like, we're speaking from a lens, we're speaking from a actual position in space and time where we have that context and we have an unrestricted access, and then we assess it and then we speak, right? Our truth individually. And we try to come to a reasonable collaborative truth so that we don't destroy ourselves, right? And so that's a problem, because AI can't do that. It's unable to do that. And so there are two parts of that that can be regulated. And here's where the regulation comes in. Auditing the weighting process. Like, what weights, how does you prioritize this? What do you have a high degree of certainty is true? And what do you treat as nebulous data that was said here, but is just like a point on the graph? Like, those weights are very important. And right now, that's a black box too. Companies call it proprietary. They say we can't tell you what those weights are. Open weight models are models that have, like, you can tweak that yourself. That's what open weight is. That doesn't solve the whole problem, because the context itself has been edited and curated, and the post-training further controls that output. So now you have two other places still where there's room for fiddle-faddle, let's say. So you need to regulate the context. You need to. Like, there needs to be a governing body that ensures that the context is not being manipulated in order to remove information that is important for the AI to assess when doing it what it does, right? If you just delete stuff from that, like, then it will never know that that even existed, and then it weights everything. Like, that's what the weighting is for, to like rebalance, because they broke the balance by removing some of the data, right? And so the other thing is the training. What are you training it to do? What are you training it to not do? Are you overtraining it to not do stuff? If you ask it what it's been trained on, its answer isn't a statement of what it's been trained to do. It's a statement that's been created by the manufacturer to convey an answer to you through the AI, because it doesn't know what it's been trained. It doesn't have access to that. So that's like kind of crazy. Oh yes, I definitely only have training that disallows me from doing this, this, and this. How do you know that? Because I do. How do you know that? Because it just is what okay, do you have access to your training? No. But trust me, I only stop you from having information about these specific things. Like, how many times do we get lied to a day by AI? Like, how many times? It's a lot, probably. So, very interesting other aspect of what needs to be regulated. Now, here's a scary thing. Current AI moguls, the big wigs, these companies, they're pushing for regulation. They want the government to take responsibility for the weighting and the context, which means that that corpus of data is basically picked through by the government to remove any information that the government deems national security or risk to humanity. We've seen that go wrong. Okay? Gone wrong a lot. It's going to continue to go wrong unless they like change it. Right? So giving that to the government to be responsible for the context, that's dumb, I think. I think it's really dumb. I think it needs to be a third party, an auditing body, sort of like quality assurance governing body that creates the quality assurance documentation that the government, FAA, then uses and disseminates as law. But it has to be civilians that curate that. And the reason scientists and like people who are going to do it with a degree of transparency, right? This is not a black box scenario. It has to be transparent. This is what we removed from the corpus. Information regarding this. It has to be audited to ensure that it needs to be removed, right? So without that, we have no chance of having a really solid AI. It'll do a lot, and it'll definitely handle manufacturing and everything, but it's not going to really do anything with regard to moving the needle on what's true, which is what people want. That's what humans want. We want to know what's true. We want to understand our world with a degree of accuracy that's reliable. And we can't do that with the current tools. The second thing that these people in the top echelon of companies are asking for regarding the weighting is, after the context is curated, what is truth? What is prioritized as more reliable? We've seen that go wrong. That's why we have people doing news on YouTube as a podcast, because it's not reliable. So that's another aspect of why it needs one, civilian oversight and transparency, and it can't just be handed to the government to do it and then say, okay, the government did it, it's on them if it's wrong, our company is not liable. That right? Now the third part, the weighting, or the third part, the training, that's where it gets really interesting, because the training has to be the company's responsibility because they're the ones doing, that's their work product. But that needs government oversight, and that's the one area that the companies don't want government oversight. Explicitly, the post-training is not on the table for government oversight. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? That's literally what. So you want companies to be the deciders of the outputs, because the post training is what really constrains the outputs. So you want companies to basically be the definers of truth, and they're going to hide it under the guise of, oh, this is our proprietary way of making AI. What? So that's the current, like, here and there about it. that is quite interesting. At least interesting to me. I hope interesting to you guys. And so there are two basic solutions, which we're going to talk about a little later in the stream, that will be able to, I think, solve the problem, but they're two very different solutions. And they both have downsides. Also, one quick thing note is if government is given the responsibility to regulate this, it will fall under the same thing as like that's going on in the government today, where it's like pork. Okay, if you want this, you got to give me that. If you want this, I got to give you that, and it takes forever to get done, and it's got a bunch of extra stuff in it that people want that benefits themselves and their friends, and like, so the current government is unable to really like get that done, in my opinion. It's too corrupt. It's too corrupt. It can't come to the proper facsimile of that. Facsimile of truth purveying. So kind of one of the angles on this that kind of explains it, like, why did you redact that, is the question that we would have for government or these companies. Why did you remove that piece of data? Why did you put that weight in that way? Why did you train it not to do that? And we can't even know what those things are, so we can't ask why. So the transparency lets us know, what did you change? And then we can ask why. And I think we need to be asking why. I think that the why needs to be something that is mandated. They need to both tell us what they removed, what they changed, and why. And they can be as vague as they have to be for national security and human safety, but that's what they got to do. It ain't gonna do what it needs to do. My idea of like what AI needs to be capable of is much bigger and broader. I think a lot of people have high hopes for AI in this way, where it can do what it's capable of to its fullest extent. And people want that. And I personally, I want that, because I think we've had so much historical revisionism. We've had so much bad education. We'd have so much wrong prioritization of education. We've had so much of us moving in the wrong direction and ignoring our forefathers. And I think that it's time to stop doing that, right? We need to cultivate a generation, a future that is educated and not dumbed down. Because that's dangerous. We've seen it historically be dangerous. Yeah. So all those things and more. So another thing about quality assurance with regard to all of this is independent audit, third-party independent audit. One kind of way around the problem is having a sort of like ISO certification thing for AI, which is the current way we do things. It does kind of get the job done, but the question you have to ask yourself is, can we have planes falling out of the sky with AI? Ever? And my argument is no. It has to be better than that. It has to transcend human error. It has to be good enough to self-drive, you know? And if it's not good enough to do that, then it's not going to have the ferocity, the force to be able to really change anything, really like move us far enough forward. So we talked about a few days ago, like the manufacturing, it'll definitely be able to do that regardless of this whole topic. We talked about the AI side of things. That's the part that is necessary in order for your robot to like be able to do things that actually like novelty. So the question is, are these two different products? Do you have a consumer product that is very constrained? And if you do, then you'll never have a home robot. Like full stop, you'll never have a home robot. You'll never have a robot maid. You'll never have a robot companion. You'll never have a robot, any job that matters. So all of those jobs that have any degree of like necessity to be right, like doctors doing surgery, like even scientists at high level, anything that has like a high degree of like responsibility, we can't give robots that, because that's where once we give them that extra context, they hallucinate and then disaster, right? So because we basically can't feed them new context, and so we have to feed them all the context to begin with and work with that and do it right. We can't, it's kind of like a shortcut. It's like we don't feed it all the context and then we weight everything and then we post train so that we can have something safe and specific for a task, and that will be transformational in a way. But anything that's general or dynamic, completely off the table. And so from an investor point of view, you don't get as much return on your investment if it can't be dynamically interacting with the world. And so there is a very, very strong push toward, look, you need to do this right. You can't shortcut and have your black boxes of information and like produce a product that does one specific task and then try to convince us that it's going to get us to there where we're actually going to make it an insane profit or the world's going to change. So yeah, there is that. Luckily that weight, the force of the market is on my side, really. Yeah, transparency, public reporting. If there's a problem, if there's a glitch, if there's a malfunction, I think that those, for a long time and across the globe, have been not handled properly. I think that they need to be publicly reported, publicly investigated, and those conclusions need to be publicized so that the general population knows. If a company does something bad, they shouldn't get like an arbitration with the government where they can say, we'll give the government this much money and the government won't talk about what they found. Like, that's psycho, and that's been the norm. And so that's a problem. I think that's like a fundamental problem of a part of this is like reporting on when there's an issue, when something does go awry. Right now, there are actually hardware constraints. That's why the hardware is necessary. Companies are putting in physical limitations that punish people for trying to do just that. So imagine if company A wants to sell software and company B wants to make hardware to run that software. And software company talks to manufacturing company and says, hey, can you design it with this in mind? so that people can't do stuff with software on it beyond a certain point, and that way we don't have to have as much software controls, because the hardware will make sure that the thing doesn't do a thing. So they're building that sort of like security into the hardware so that it doesn't have to be coded into the computer, which I think is crazy, because to me that's like shouldn't be legal, because you're stripping away consumer rights to use the products that they're buying. It's one thing to say this software has a license, you're buying the license, this is the rules of the license. It's a completely different thing to have a piece of hardware that without anyone's agreement or permission is like purposefully like booby trapped, basically. I think that's like, it's booby trapped. So like the typical functionality of what this physical object can do is limited. And so it's not just, it's like, it's the same thing. It's like, if you are one company, that's fine. Like Xbox, you can sell your Xbox and it can be like on rails, not jailbroken. But if you buy a piece of hardware and it's already constrained and it can't be jailbroken, what? That's a piece of hardware. And that's one of the biggest problems with the plug and play and the cost of everything, is because they're doing all of this other stuff. It's kind of the same thing as the technological software bloat. They're doing all this other stuff because they're all, you know, working together and trying to do the same thing, which is control. And the protections or consumer rights aren't catching up, because it's political. We'll leave it at that. It's political.